Today is Saturday, December the 28th, 2024, and I wanted to share with you some footage of a raccoon which our neighbor had befriended and who had allowed to dwell on his property that we've also been concerned about because as you can see, it appears she's ill. And I wanted to share this for two reasons. One is because the raccoon symptoms mimic exactly what we observed Chili going through as her health began to deteriorate. And again, in August, she was chasing rabbits and, she wasn't catching them because we were all outside, but she, was running and, relatively healthy. And then she began to become more lethargic and she stopped eating. And so we took her to the vet who ran all the labs and who indicated that, they didn't find anything like what Wildlife Rescue has said to us is probably what is going on with this particular raccoon. And so I just wanted to share that with you because I have said over and over that it is important that we pay attention to what is going on in the natural environment around us, especially with the animals, because if the animals are getting sick, then the humans are also getting sick, although the humans may not be as sick as the animals are when they're not behaving the way you typically have observed them in nature. A confounding issue is that we have been trying to call animal control, we have called emergency services, and of course we've called wildlife rescue, and no one has been willing to come out or to investigate or to capture the animal. We haven't even been able to get a response from animal control or animal protection. So it's a different experience than we had with when someone called them with concerns about Chili. We did receive a text from Wildlife Rescue, which said, unfortunately, various cities have an outbreak of distemper. The animals infected are highly contagious to mammals and sadly will die a slow, painful death. Beginning signs can be them being docile. They will start curling up, laying down in places out in the open. They will start displaying neurological issues, which will either resemble drunk walking, stumbling, or will lose limb movement, dragging legs. They eventually will start seizing until their death. If you or your neighbors have dogs, please make sure they're up to date on vaccinations, as well as it wouldn't hurt to reach out to your vet for further precautions. Distemper is airborne and does not require direct contact to contract. Please reach out to animal control if they ask you to reach out to wildlife rescue. Please let them know that you've already spoke to us and we're saying it's sick and needs to be picked up. The last thing I'd like to share to make my full point of this video is to first share with you this post regarding the city of Norfolk, which I'm not going to read, but then to also share with you a post that I made this morning, which sort of brings everything that I'm discussing in context. I've also been joining cat care groups, especially senior cat care groups, because I've been looking for people who share my interests and who may also be willing to share information to collaborate on the care of cats who are considered seniors, because Cece is 13 years old. And I found a group called Senior Pets and Senior Pets with Dementia, which I ultimately decided to leave because the majority of the posts were admins admonishing members for having anything negative to say about veterinary care or proper care of senior animals, and also posts about cats who had been euthanized or had passed on. And it was just too depressing for me to stay in a group with that kind of climate. But I bring that up because I was not aware that there was a diagnosis for dementia in cats, which relates to the post that I made this morning and sort of ties everything together. It started with this post that a friend reshared, and I decided to take on in response to. Robin Williams took his own life because he was diagnosed with Lewy body dementia. Bruce Willis just learned that his illness is frontotemporal dementia and Lewy body dementia. One of the hardest things to process is the slow change in the one you love, becoming a completely different person. Everything changes, just so you know. It's called the long goodbye. Rapidly shrinking brain is how a doctor described it. As the patient's brain slowly dies, they change physically and eventually forget who their loved ones are and become less themselves. Patients can eventually become bedridden, unable to move, and unable to eat or drink or talk to their loved ones. There will be people who will scroll by this message because dementia, Alzheimer's, or Parkinson's has not touched them. They may not know what it's like to have a loved one who has fought or is fighting a battle. I then react this way. I'm not sure what someone does when giving a diagnosis like that. If what has been indicated is true about Robin Williams, in this resharing request I have reposted here, it would seem to me that taking control of his own life in this situation wasn't suicide. It was voluntary euthanasia to hurry a terminal diagnosis. To then have it be called the long goodbye for people who will watch it without consideration of the people who suffer it bothered me to read. It's as if people are being told, once you have this diagnosis, there isn't anything you can do to help your loved one except wait with them while they suffer and forget you. It's the same message given to families once their loved ones are put in hospice, whether they leave a hospital or nursing care facility or not. My mother-in-law died with dementia, but it wasn't the cause of her death. She had been slowly deteriorating mentally and physically since my father-in-law died and could no longer be left alone by 2016 or so. Her memory was intact until she died, but we could only access that part of her when she was lucid, which was most of the time. After being hospitalized for gastrointestinal complications that required surgery and ultimately a colostomy bag to address, the length of her periods of lucidity rapidly began to decrease. I never stopped trying to bring her back to reality. I used 25-piece puzzles and her favorite large print word find books. She also liked crosswords and Sudoku, but those were out of the question given everything else she was enduring. She had been unable to get out of bed at the hospital, but was walking when discharged to a nursing home. Her condition deteriorated rapidly there and after that. She was hospitalized and rendered unconscious during her last hospital stay. My point is that if your loved one is responding and even still experiencing lucidity, it isn't a goodbye. For me, it meant help, and I did, with full hope and intention of bringing her home with us, until she helped us to understand she was ready to move on, not return to anyone's home, nursing or otherwise. I will never accept a diagnosis the medical community cannot explain the cause for. If they don't know, then I'll be working to try to figure it out just like they should be. My focus is never on the sickness and or disability for all humanity. My focus is on the person I care about and dealing with their individual and unique symptoms for which I expect their medical team to answer and treat in collaboration with whatever we find has been working. In that way, both my loved ones and I are capable of helping anyone who is suffering in the same or similar ways by sharing that process and hearing what they have tried and is working that we have not yet. If people cannot talk to each other without interference, however, it makes collaboration like this a burden, if not impossible, to achieve productively for all involved. People who are practicing are also still learning. If this were not true, the course of pathogenic medicine and science would no longer be needed and cease to exist. If that isn't the goal of pathologists and even epidemiologists, for example, then they are part of the problem. No one should ever be forced to slowly suffer and then fall into complete amnesia of the life they have lived and people they love. To simply watch it happen or encourage someone else to accept it and then let it happen is not only an indignity, it is injustice.
A warning tonight about what's believed to be a viral disease killing raccoons in Virginia Beach. While people can't get it, dogs and sometimes cats can. Here's what pet owners need to know.
The first one we found was over here.
Sick and dying raccoons are creating concern among neighbors in the Bayville section of Virginia Beach. Glenn Gilman's family found 2 in their yard.
This one was just a couple of days ago, and that one maybe about a week ago.
Neighbors caught this clearly ill raccoon circling and pacing around their back deck in the middle of the day.
It is a little scary because you don't want to be around the raccoon. You're not sure, what he's going to do. He's sick.
In some cases, neighbors report the animals are literally falling from the trees.
Last night they found one at like 1 a.m. dead in somebody's driveway.
Animal control confirms an uptick in raccoon calls in several areas of the city: Bayville, Great Neck, and Kempsville.
There's no way for us to differentiate whether it's rabid or has distemper.
That's because they're not testing.
It's one of those things where if there's no known exposure, then no, we won't test because of the resources it takes.
Rabies is a threat to people and their pets. People do not get distemper, but dogs, like the Gilman's pets, could get it, and there is no cure.
Okay, I didn't realize that. That's good to know.
So make sure your pet's vaccines are up to date. And if you see this kind of disturbing behavior or a dead raccoon, keep your distance and call animal control. We also reached out to the Virginia Department of Health. A spokesperson confirmed that they did test some of the deceased animals about a month ago after reports that some ill raccoons were approaching people. They tell us that all of them tested negative for rabies, so they believe it is distemper.